Well, good morning, everyone. We are in Genesis chapter 26. Today we are still with Isaac, and believe it or not, we will only have really today yet with Isaac. He doesn't have a whole lot of Genesis written about him, but that's okay. Not everybody has to be a star, so to speak. And also, too, it was good. He didn't get into maybe too much trouble or wars in his life. Last time we talked about his family growing and his sons, and we saw how he's got twins, Jacob and Esau. You know, I suppose. Much of why we have Isaac recorded is to tell us the background of Jacob coming up and the tribes of Israel and such. But nevertheless, let's continue with the first 11 verses of chapter 26. We note in verse 1 there's the Philistines. These are the people that lived along the Mediterranean coast in the southwest part of Canaan. You know this as probably the Gaza Strip area. They were not native Canaanites, but Indo-European people who had come down from the north. They were worldly people who were God's persistent enemies. So they're kind of outsiders. And later in verse 7, we'll talk about the sister. So even though Isaac and Rebekah were blood relatives, Isaac was deceitful in calling her his sister. And this is going to be kind of the same song and dance with that Abraham had. Right? He was fearful for his life and says Rebekah is his sister. A reader. Wow, please.
Now there was a famine in the land, besides the earlier famine of Abraham's time. And Isaac went to Abimelech, king of the Philistines, in Gerar. The Lord appeared to Isaac and said, "Do not go down to Egypt. Live in the land where I tell you to live. Stay in this land for a while, and I will be with you and will bless you. For to you and your descendants I will give all these lands, and will confirm the oath I swore to your father Abraham. I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, and will give them all these lands. And through your offspring, all nations on earth will be blessed, because Abraham obeyed me and kept my requirements and my commands, my decrees and my laws." So Isaac stayed in Gerar. When the men of that place asked him about his wife, he said, "She is my sister," because he was afraid to say, "She is my wife." He thought the men of this place might kill me on account of Rebekah, because she is beautiful. When Isaac had been there a long time, Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked down from a window and saw Isaac caressing his wife Rebekah. So Abimelech summoned Isaac and said, "She is really your wife? What did you say? Why did you say she's my sister?" Isaac answered him, "Because I thought I might lose my life on account of her." Then Abimelech said, "What is this you have done to us? One of the men might well have slept with your wife, and you would have brought guilt upon us." So Abimelech gave orders to all the people, "Anyone who molests this man or his wife shall surely be put to death."
All right. So another famine, not too surprising that this part of the country is arid. It has a rainy season in the spring. In a minute we're gonna find out that Isaac is a prolific well digger, and that is pretty important. You're gonna have to have wells to feed your flocks and water, just your family. So. Question 1 asks, whenever there was a famine in the land, it was tempting for the people to go down to Egypt. The Nile flowed from high in the mountains of Central Africa and provided a dependable source of water. Why didn't the Lord want Isaac to go down to Egypt? We'll ask that question first. Certainly must have been on his mind. But don't even think about it, Blaine. Susan?
Well, God told him he didn't want him to, so why would you do something that God told you he didn't want you to do? But I would think that even today, didn't the people of Gaza, weren't they told to go south down to Egypt, but then they weren't allowed in? So I think it was pretty prevalent that would have been the ideal spot to go, and God is telling him, no, I don't want you to go there.
Yeah, and really, if they would have gone, there would have been a temptation to stay, and that's not what the Lord wants. I mean, the Israelites are going to go to Egypt at some point, but not yet. So, well. What promise did the Lord give Isaac to help him fight the temptation to go there?
The same one he always gave to Abraham, that he would bless them and the offspring and be with him, and the plan he had for them that he established with his father Abraham.
All right, so he'll take care of you. I think we can apply this to our lives in certain situations too. You know, there are shortcuts or temptations to steal or to get ahead that people take. Maybe things are questionably ethical. But as Christians, we trust God's plan. He's going to take care of us, and we need, if we do the right thing and obey His commands and listen to Him, we'll be okay. We don't need to smudge our taxes or the Medicare form or the hospital admittance form or what have you. You may suffer up front because you're honest, but God will bless you. So just some of my thoughts on that, and the promise there. So let's focus in on that a little bit. So what great blessing did the Lord give Isaac? Verse 3 and 4.
Joe's
Jones?
descendants would be as numerous as the stars, just like he did to Abraham.
All right, so I think in verse 4 the translations go back and forth. They translate it your offspring, or your seed, but it's singular, right? There's going to be one individual that's going to come from your great nation, and you're going to be like the stars in the sky. Yeah, so very very similar. About the only little tweak or difference I could find was the word land. I mean, I think it was like plural and was it plural here and singular before? I'll give you these lands, he told Isaac. And then if you go back to Abraham, he says, I'll give you this land. So not really not even worth a hair worth splitting there. The same promise is given, and that's what Isaac needed to hear during this famine, during this time of tribulation. Comments, thoughts so far? Yeah, Naomi. Oh, you raise your hand, Naomi?
Yes. Was Philistia really given to the descendants? Because I remember the Philistines bothered them a lot.
So So when Joshua and the Israelites,
Okay.
come later,
Oh, yeah.
they are to drive them out.
Take the land, drive them. But they
But
didn't.
but at a certain point, they're the most stubborn, hardened warriors in the area that, well, we'll just take care of that tomorrow, or we're okay not having quite all the land God promised. Yeah. Good question. So, but even they, I mean, we in our notes, we kind of read that they weren't exactly locals either. So it wasn't even like anybody wanted them there either. Not just the tribes of Judah, but even the locals, the Canaanites, don't get along with the Philistines or Philistines, however you want to pronounce it. So 3, Isaac 2 succumbed to the pressure of trying to escape possible harm by calling Rebekah his sister. How did this situation parallel Abraham's actions in Egypt? So this famine is pushing him further and further towards the Philistines. We're kind of in a decent land over by Sodom and Gomorrah with his dad, but now we're creeping west. What are some of the parallels between his dad and him with saying their wives? Yeah.
Abraham told the people that Sarah was his sister, and Isaac did the same with Rebekah.
Yep.
The thing that was different was the king here found out by seeing with his own eyes the action of Isaac and Rebekah, whereas Abraham and Sarah, God intervened there to protect Sarah.
Yeah. In chapter 12, verse 17, we won't look it up, but he talks about serious diseases come upon Pharaoh. And, we speculated on what that could be. We don't know, but God intervened. And then, was that a dream? Was that his wise men said, hey, ever since Sarah came around, you're getting sick. This was, that was a big difference. This time he sees, one translation will say caressing, another I think, maybe I think both the NIV 84 and EHV said caressing. So some sort of physical touch that he's like, you're not your sister.
And they already had 2 children.
They already had 2 children. Well,
How do you hide that?
This is given
well, this is after they're hunting and kind of grown up, right? So that probably is.
But how do you explain, unless he had a concubine? How
Well,
do you explain the fact that you have those 2 children?
Well, I mean, they're young adults, they're young men, So maybe aren't they? Esau's going on his own hunting, and
But didn't the people know that? I mean, they still knew that they were their children. I don't.
it's always hard to know what people knew.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we don't. And the thing also is we don't know how long this was kept a secret. Was this? I mean, again, we're assuming she's a very beautiful woman. Would it have taken months for people to figure that out and sleep with her? Probably not. But again, I'm just conjecturing there. So, at any rate, they're not very sneaky or good liars, which that's okay. And Abimelech is glad he found out, because that's the surprising thing too with both of them. Abraham and Isaac both underestimate the morality of Pharaoh and Abimelech, which I don't know. Maybe there's something there to be said too. That the conscience still works in the lives of unbelievers, and not to confuse that with faith or anything, but yeah. So that's a similarity, and also just the fact that God doesn't bring the hammer down on them afterwards either. God continues to bless them even after they, fail in trusting Him. And of course, that's what they should have done. And again, did we say in the note? Yeah, I mean they're blood relatives technically. Sarah was Abraham's sister, through blood, and I don't know. I mean, the world's a small place. Everybody's related at this point. You kind of just draw that conclusion. If you really want to push the issue, we're related through a great grandpa or something. So, yeah, I mean, we do see Abimelech have this response very similar. Whoever touches this man or his wife will be put to death. And that was the translation. Yeah, I think the NIV said molests, causes harm, and well, let's tackle 4 there. So sometimes we give much attention to the sins of the patriarchs and treat them as especially great sinners. Yet in each of these accounts, the Lord does not rebuke them. He continues to shower His blessings upon them. And why do you think this is so? So, in verse 12, after his sin, God turns around and gives him like one of the greatest harvests ever. Why do you think this is God's plan?
Because they had the blessing. They had the Masonic blessing. And that is the number one most important thing that God gave the early patriarchs. And nothing or no one was going to break that promise, no matter what they did. But it still is a great blessing. He didn't have to bless them as much as what he did, but in most of these cases, he really lavishes upon them. I don't know. How does that make Isaac feel? I don't know.
Yeah. We have the blessing, and it's the most important thing. Any other thoughts? Yeah.
I was thinking about this morning, that these stories are important for us. And I know that often the patriarchs, we put them up on those pedestals like they're some great good guys and stuff like that. But God is teaching us that they're sinners, we're sinners, and God forgives. And neither one of these men out and out rejected God. They sinned, they probably sought forgiveness. They weren't, like it says here, He didn't rebuke them, He forgave them. They were His children, as He will do for us when we err even severely. But none of them just turned their backs on Him. That would have been a different scenario for both of them, but because they were chosen, and they're going to sin because, living on this earth, given our closeness to God and how much we want to obey Him, there are those times when we will fail. And that's why these tell us too that God will forgive us no matter how great, as long as we haven't turned our backs on Him and rejected Him totally.
Yeah. I put in my notes, not that we plan on God's mercy, but we sure delight in it. And you have patriarchs and kings that are murderers or adulterers or questioning, should I help God's plan along by doing this? And God says, no, don't help me along. And God blesses them. How does that impact how we look at our lives and know God's mercy is there and how great it is. So, and again, like you both were saying, it's by you have faith, right? They didn't turn away from God. They were still men of God, and that's what we keep going back to also. By faith, God has mercy on us, and faith is a gift of God's mercy too. So, kind of a circular logic there, but it is the Bible's teaching.
Naomi had something. Naomi?
Oh yeah, Naomi?
Oh, I saw a saying that was, God is not through writing your life. Stop trying to take the pen from him. I mean, that's literal, but I know this is not.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know, I think you come to realization that God works with care on people's hearts and souls. Sometimes the sin doesn't seem to be the greatest. Moses hits a rock. Okay, you can't go into the promised land now? Like that seems like a harsh thing. Abraham, Isaac, they pawn off their wife as their sister. That seems like a great thing, but then they nothing happens. But there's time involved in where they're at in their life. Moses was done. That this was one of God's reasons to say, it's time to change. Give over to Joshua, and this isn't a lot. So a lot of these things, we're keeping the nation strong and growing it. It's not time to punish and work on them in a different way with such. So anyway, yeah. Susan?
I think that today the reverse of that can be very, very applicable in the fact that we are all sinners. But a non-Christian looking at a Christian that is going through a great deal of things in their life, personal as well as other things, whether it be medical or whatever, it seems like some people just get piled on at certain times in their life with many, many different things coming at them, and a non-Christian will look at them and say, where is your God? Your God is right there with you. And those people that are going through this also have eyes that see all the blessings in between that other people don't see. And that helps increase their faith. But it can work the other way too, and it's just as great a blessing as if God lavishes these things on people. It's His doing. It's like Naomi said, I always look at it as God is the artist of my life. He's not done with the portrait yet.
Yeah, we might give equal weight to the situation and say, someone could easily have said, well, Isaac, your God isn't with you. Why are you suffering from this famine? And then, you wait 6 months or you wait a year and then it's just the bumper crop. Well, your God is with you. And, so, a believer's always realizing God is with me even through hardship. And maybe it's our job to remind people of that.
But it's still a blessing when we go through that. The blessing is the same.
Yeah. As if refined by fire. Discipline seems pleasant at the time, but brings forth a harvest of righteousness, right? So, well, good to see God is consistent in His Old Testament and New Testament with dealing with His people. Next verses, 12 through 35. So 12 to the end of the chapter. We got to dig some wells. And take a reader there. Sure.
The whole section? Are you ready to go find it.
If you want the whole section, I'll
I
give
can
it to
do
you.
it. And Isaac sowed in that land and reaped in the same year 100-fold. The Lord blessed him, and the man became rich and gained more and more until he became very wealthy. He had possessions of flocks and herds and many servants, so that the Philistines envied him. Now the Philistines had stopped and filled with earth all the wells that his father's servants had dug in the days of Abraham his father. And Abimelech said to Isaac, "Go away from us, for you are much mightier than we." So Isaac departed from there and encamped in the valley of Gerar and settled there. And Isaac dug again the wells of water that had been dug in the days of Abraham his father, which the Philistines had stopped after the death of Abraham. And he gave them the names that his father had given them. But when Isaac's servants dug in the valley and found there a well of spring water, the herdsmen of Gerar quarreled with Isaac's herdsmen, saying, "The water is ours." So he called the name of the well Esek, because they contended with him. Then they dug another well, and they quarreled over that also. So he called its name Sitnah. And he moved from there and dug another well, and they did not quarrel over it. So he called its name Rehoboth, saying, "For now the Lord has made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land." From there he went up to Beersheba, and the Lord appeared to him that same night and said, "I am the God of Abraham your father. Fear not, for I am with you, and will bless you, and multiply your offspring for my servant Abraham's sake." So he built an altar there, and called upon the name of the Lord, and pitched his tent there, and there Isaac's servants dug a well. When Abimelech went to him from Gerar with Ahuzah his advisor, and Michael the commander of his army, Isaac said to him, "Why have you come to me, seeing that you hate me and have sent me away from you?" They said, "You see plainly that the Lord has been with you." So we said, "Let there be a sworn pact between us, between you and us. And let us make a covenant with you that you will do us no harm, just as we have not touched you and have done to you nothing but good, and have sent you away in peace. You are now the blessed of the Lord." So he made them a feast, and they ate and drank. In the morning they rose early and exchanged oaths, and Isaac sent them on their way, and they departed from him in peace. That same day Isaac's servants came and told him about the well that they had dug, and said to him, "We have found water." He called it Sheba, therefore the name of the city is Beersheba to this day. When Esau was 40 years old, he took Judith, the daughter of Beri the Hittite, to be his wife, and Basemath, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, and they made life bitter for Isaac and Rebekah.
All right. So I overstated Isaac a little bit. He will be in chapter 27 too, but this is the majority of his life. This covers 75 years of his life. In chapter 27, we'll hear one major account of the rest of his life. Otherwise, we hear nothing about him. His life was more like ours. He simply put his hope in the Lord on a day-to-day basis. Joan?
Seeing as this chapter covers 75 years, the two twins were not born yet when Isaac was at Abimelech's area. Because here it says that Esau was 40 years old when he married two women. So that's
So-
35 years in between there.
Very good point, Joan. We do not have an account of that is chronological.
So I think that the other chapter, they put an event that comes ahead of this Abimelech thing, probably because it was more important.
Right. Yeah. So we are jumping around, and that's the fun of Old Testament readings. Yeah. So we hear about the pregnancy. Why? I guess Because logically, yeah, we like to do that. We like to talk about the family members and then tell this history about them and then come back. So as we bridge from Isaac to Jacob, we have to come back to we have to come back to Esau and Jacob in chapter 27. So your point would be, yeah, maybe they weren't. It wouldn't make sense to say that they were too old to be seen, and so she hasn't had a child yet because she had her. Yeah, you're right, in her old age, right? So I stand corrected. Thank you. Yeah. See, if you get confused, your pastor gets confused too. That's the moral of the story, right?
About 20 years younger than Isaac was, because he was 40 years old when the servant went to Uncle Laban to get a wife.
Right, yeah, he was a bit older, yeah. Well, the notes there, look, verse 17, the valley of Gerar. Gerar seems to have been the Philistine capital during the days of patriarchs. At first, Isaac must have lived close to the city. When Abimelech asked him to move, he remained in the Philistine territory, but some distance away in the valley of Gerar. So Beersheba, a location further to the west on the edge of the desert. He seems to have been outside the Philistine territory, but close enough that Abimelech was still concerned about Isaac's strength. Questions. Why did Isaac move away from the Philistines at their request? Hint, consider that Abimelech said what Abimelech said about how powerful Isaac was. Why move? Probably didn't want to, but
Keep peace.
yeah,
They were growing, obviously Isaac's family and everything theirs was growing. And just to give some space between the two nations.
yeah. This Abimelech, which we think is the son of Abraham's Abimelech, seems to be an all right guy. He's like, I don't want anybody sleeping with your wife. I don't want my people getting nervous and fighting with your herdsmen. And so, yeah. And Isaac takes it that way. He saw the wisdom in it. Even though that meant kind of starting over, right? Kind of digging more wells and trusting in the Lord. But he did. And question 2. How did Isaac deal with the envy and hostility of the herdsmen living in the valley of Gerar, who kept stealing his wells? So they kept filling up his wells, right? So there was not just perceived conflict, but it was starting to heat up. How did he deal with that?
He moved and found another place.
Yeah. Was he chicken? Yeah. Was he afraid to fight him? So I think I don't know if there's another question that makes this point, but I'll make the point now. He's turning the other cheek, really, right? There's no harm in saying, maybe this isn't the hill to fight on. We're just going to find a place where we can live in peace, and that's maturity too. I mean, and God seems to and blesses that.
Kind of remind you, Pastor, about out west, the conflict between cattle and sheep farmers, where territory, became a real issue, and came to battles, for that resources that each, need.
Oh yeah, it reminds me of Sheep Slaughter Hill out in Washington. They were looking for a place to take my kids sledding, and they're like, "Well, you should take your kids to sheep slaughter. Go sledding."
What?
They're like, "What?" And it was just a historical site of a big herdsman conflict, and you know what happened at sheep slaughter? The guy slaughtered all the guy's sheep out there. Get them off my land. Put some fences up, and yeah, not even that long ago, really. Those debates were happening, and got violent, got nasty. What assurance did God give Isaac in verse 24? How did Isaac respond? Gave him the assurance, Joan?
That he'd have many children and that he would be blessed. And he built an altar to serve the Lord.
Yes, God, I know. You keep telling my dad this. You keep telling me this. You're a broken record, God. No, it wasn't a message he couldn't hear enough, probably. Right? Just like those promises that we continue to hold on to and proclaim. Needed to hear it again, and so he did. And again, not that Isaac. We don't get the big prayer from Isaac like we get from like David and others, right? Like, God, why have you forsaken me? Why is this happening? Either he's not a whiner or he's not a writer and a whiner. But God answers it, right? Well, it's gonna be all right. Yeah. Susan?
This is where God wanted Isaac to be, in Beersheba. So that last well that he dug, they didn't argue about, they didn't fight about anymore. So that was the sign. And then the promise comes again, and then he builds the altar. It's
Yeah.
ironic how God works.
You know, I can't go to Egypt. I know that much from God. I'm not going to have success fighting the Philistines. Maybe two, just the sheer numbers and fierceness of them does not suggest this is a wise idea. I'm going to just live in peace. I'm going to just keep moving. And then this happens, right? I mean, you really get the impression nobody expects here on the edge of the desert to find a nice well. If they would, the Philistines would have been digging there years ago. But they did. God blessed them. Right? And that kind of answers question 4. How did the Lord bless Isaac's loving and patient way with dealing with Abimelech? Well, he blessed his flocks, right? He gave him this new well, and yeah, his family is growing. Where the babies were born in this process, we are not told, but I don't know. It might suggest after this well, after things kind of settle down. Yeah. So 5. What can we learn from Esau's bad example? Oh, yeah, so verse 34 and 35, just the kind of our foreshadowing teaser of what's to come. And you can draw back from chapter 25 to maybe just even say, how was he a bad example? Denise, yeah.
Well, it's the don't marry a non a non-churchgoer, they tend to pull you away from your faith. Everybody thinks, oh, I can change them, I can bring them to the church, and it usually works the other way.
And well, even in Esau's case, he's not even going to want to change him, right?
Right.
Yeah,
he
he already despises his birthright, and now he doesn't even want to apparently marry or look for a partner in his own faith or clan. He finds these Hittite ladies. Again, 2 of them. I mean, it wasn't bad enough you found one Hittite lady and are shunning the family and the promise, but now you got 2 of them. And there's some question later. Maybe it'll come up next week. You know, there might have been more than 2. So yeah. So here we do have one of those passages that says, yeah, God wasn't happy with polygamy, especially when you start filling your family and harem with idol worshippers and pagans. Well, and we see it affects his parents, don't we? They were a source of bitterness for Isaac and Rebekah. So, yeah, not that your parents have to approve 100% of who you marry, but they are your parents, and you respect them. And I don't know. A lot of you have kids that are married. Do the guys still ask for permission these days?
Yes,
See some nods.
my son-in-law and my son's old.
I never heard it in seminary that teach your congregation and tell the boys they have to ask permission from the in-laws, but yeah, I think it's a good tradition, right? It's a good way to start the family off strong and right, and
What happens
You know-
if you say no?
we do these for accreditation. We do these reviews over at school, and I review the school board every year and say, this is what I'm pleased with. This is what you could do better on, and then they review me, and we give these reviews to each other. Yesterday, David said, Pastor, I think you should be reviewing us. I don't know why we're reviewing you. And I said, I think it's for reasons like this. Like, it's good for us to just sit down and have a conversation about important things, right? Maybe some conversations wouldn't be had if we don't just force ourselves to. And I said that's kind of the purpose of any review, right? You sit down with your boss and you go over a yearly review. Maybe something comes out of that is beneficial to you both. And anyway, I kind of view the marriage. Can I marry your daughter? Well, now that we're talking about it, are you going to hold a steady job? How do you talk about it? Are you going to raise Christian grandchildren for me, or are you just going to not go to church with? And it's healthy, and certainly, yeah. They're for Moses to bring this up, it's just quite notable. Any other thoughts about their bad example? Or Denise, you want to comment?
My nephew-in-law asked my brother, so they're in their 20s, and he asked, so it's still
A little younger generation. Yeah, it's kind of like getting down on the knee. So, 6 there. What Which of the Beatitudes does Isaac exemplify in his life? See Matthew 5:3-12. If you want to flip there and skim over those.
Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God.
Joan's mind went right to the passage that I was thinking. I think he is a peacemaker.
I also thought meek.
I thought that was kind of a runner-up. Yeah. Maybe the less we know about Isaac, the better he looks compared to some of the other patriarchs. But yeah, I mean, think pretty highly of the man. Outside of this episode with Abimelech and Rebecca, he flies pretty straight. He keeps to himself. He's respectful. He's trusting. He's the right guy at the right time. He will favor one son over the other. That's a weakness too. But I think we already got a hint towards why. I mean, Isaac must have been a hunter, or certainly a guy who liked his steak, and Esau always went hunting or brought him steak or something of that nature, right? Some wild game. I had some deer meat tacos last night. I gotta say, those were like really good. Really good. I ate some wild game taco meat. Yeah. So if you know Fish at the North Campus, his son came to Christmas, and we were talking about fishing and hunting or whatever. And he's like, I brought a bunch of venison, and I'm like, I fish. He's like, I like fish. I said, well, I'll swap you. So we made so Fish's son and I did a deer for perch swap. He had enough deer meat and I had enough fish. So anyway, where am I going with that? Okay, yeah. So Esau was
really know.
Yeah, Esau was really he was
Making us hungry.
Yeah, Esau was the hunter, but Jacob knew how to cook it. So so blessed are the peacemakers, blessed are the meek, and Isaac's a great example of that. And I don't know, maybe peacemakers are the unsung heroes, right? We remember the great generals and the great warriors, but also something to be said about the great diplomats and the cool-headed people in history that God blesses. So Isaac continued to live his life in humble obedience and fear of the Lord. That's where our notes end. And we'll turn the page for next week. Any last comments or thoughts about Isaac moving about, trusting the Lord, being blessed? All right. Then we'll start getting into Jacob and his life, which is always a great section too. Let's close with prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we look up to men like Isaac, who you blessed over his lifetime and gave wisdom and patience and strength. We'd ask you to guide us through our lives in such a way too that we would trust in you and also find your blessings at around every turn. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. And we'll sing God's Word is our great heritage. God's Word is our great heritage and shall be ours forever to spread its light from age to age. Shall be our chief endeavor, Through life it guides our way. In death it is our stay. For grant while worlds endure, we keep its teachings pure. Throughout all generations. Amen.